Appreciate you streaming in on this Tuesday morning after a nice long Labor Day weekend. Memorial Day weekend. You got Birds 365 with McMullen and McDonald. And we are joined by Jeff Kerr from CBSSports.com. How was your Memorial Day weekend, Kerr?
Oh, it was good. As a racing fan, I got to see my favorite team win the Indy 500 and the Coke 600. So it's been a great weekend for me.
You spend time watching racing.
That's all I do, Jody. That's what I do in the offseason.
Football, racing, bowling. That's your life is what you're telling us.
Oh, baseball and basketball, too.
Baseball,
I've been
boycotting. Basketball, everything. You are well-rounded, Jeff Kerr. I got to cut it off at some point.
I can't. I don't get enough of this stuff.
F1 racing is very popular now because of the Netflix show, I guess. I think it Premier Cup, Premier League, I kind of enjoy, but I don't really understand it. But I got to cut it off at some point, Jeff. God bless you.
Well,
Game 7, I was excited by that, but it was over pretty quickly.
Oh, I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that because still the Boston Celtics haven't won anything more than the Sixers have. They just went a round further. That's it.
Yeah, that's why they play the games. By the way, to all reporters out there, and you can double down on this, Jeff, stop talking about logistic stories. Oh, Miami's they're not flying back. They're so cocky. They're making plans to travel to Denver. Yeah, duh. That's what you do. That's what you don't just
did this.
Oh, we won. Oh, crap. We got to get travel plans. Yeah, that's not how it works. But every stinking year we have these stories. It drives me insane.
I saw the two silliest tweets about this. One was the Heat flying to Denver, and two, our buddy Elliott saying that no Boston or Lakers in the finals, it's going to be terrible for the ratings. I hope the ratings skyrocket because of this.
God bless Elliott.
We shall see. As far as the whole logistics thing, both of you guys help me out. My memory is failing. Frank Reich off the Buffalo bench, greatest comeback in postseason of all time. Was that against the Houston Oilers? Does that go back far enough to be the Houston Oilers? My buddy Glenn Mack,
Moon, right? Yeah,
that was against Warren Moon in the wild card round, 92.
Yeah. My buddy Glenn Mack now was in Buffalo in the press box, and the Buffalo, the Houston PR guy or the scheduler or everything, very loudly was making plans for the next week's game. And all the Buffalo guys are sitting there and listening to him. Yeah, we'll take flight. And, man, when Buffalo came back, he said, I never saw someone shrink in a press box like that guy did. He couldn't get far enough underneath the desk because everybody was passing snide comments. How's that plane schedule working for you there, Jeff? Whoever it was. But we digress. All right, Jeff Kerr, same question I got for you that I asked John McMullen. Percentage chance DeAndre Hopkins becomes a Philadelphia Eagle?
I'll go 30.
Wow, you're much more than me and Johnny.
Whoa, I was at 2%.
I was at 3.
I don't think he's coming here. There are too many teams that A, need a receiver, and B, there are enough Super Bowl contenders that could use him. Kansas City, Buffalo, Baltimore. I'm sure him and the by the way, that was another story that kind of drove me nuts this weekend. Jalen Hurts is following DeAndre Hopkins on Instagram. Yes, so is Josh Allen, so is Patrick Mahomes, so is Lamar Jackson, so is Aaron Rodgers. There are a lot of people following DeAndre Hopkins. They're all buddies.
Yeah. I think it was Jokic was talking about social media. Get the hell off social media. Stop. The only people on social media should be people that need to be there for their jobs. It's poison. And part of that is, now players have at times used social media to express disharmony with their organizations. You know, the famous, so-and-so took the logo off all their social media to indicate they're angry.
Oh, yeah.
But as far as players following other players, big shocker. They're friends. And when you're a star player like DeAndre Hopkins, but I'm more interested in the 30%, Jeff. How are the Eagles making A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and DeAndre Hopkins happy if Howie Roseman can get this 30% deal done. I mean, how is that going to work?
Well, that's the thing. You're not going to make all three of those guys happy. But I think the 30% comes from all the stuff he has said he wants to go to: a stable front office, a winning culture, the Eagles, a good defense, the Eagles. Oh, and he mentioned Jalen Hurts second of all the quarterbacks he wanted to play with. Josh Allen was first, by the way. But just because all this is possible, and the Eagles do have $13.5 million in cap space, I just don't think that it's logical because they do need help at linebacker. I think they could use another safety. But if he really wanted to come here and said, I'll take less money to come here, I doubt he's going to do that because there are teams that are going to offer him more money and a chance.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, Jeff. And Jody knows this. I say it all the time. I always say coaches are not under oath on the podium. Why do we assume that DeAndre Hopkins is under oath on the podcast that he said, oh, I want this, I want this, I want this? Whereas I would bet biggest check, that's where he's going.
That's where he's going. Write it down right now.
And this is what's tough for me because Buffalo and Kansas City don't really have the cap space to make this work. Kansas City used their cap space on Donovan Smith, and Buffalo just doesn't have enough. Now, Baltimore's got some cap space to use on another receiver, and I'm sure Lamar is probably telling Eric DeCosta, hey, you know what? We got some room here. Let's add him in with Odell, Bateman, and Flowers, and let's go for it. And it's what's crazy is people are talking DeAndre Hopkins to Dallas. I don't think that's going to be a possibility, but Dallas has the money to go pay this guy if they want to do it.
Yeah, that would be interesting. The Cowboys, because obviously I think, if you ask me who the three best teams are in the NFC, I'm going to go Eagles, Niners, Cowboys. And, that might be sort of a seismic type shift between Dallas and Philadelphia. This is a very good player. Now, he's had a couple down years from his standpoint, but 5-time All-Pro. Maybe the best hands in the business. You team him up with CD Lamb. That might make Eagles fans a little wary.
I would say this too. Watch the Cleveland Browns. He does have a good relationship with Deshaun Watson.
Cleveland, yeah.
Maybe Detroit. Maybe. I don't know, though, because they do have Jameson Williams eventually coming back, but Detroit's all in.
Yeah, how long did he get suspended for?
6 games.
6 games? Yeah, that's tough. But you can't, even 6 games, you can't base he's going to be back, and you can't base your whole season on 6 games and say, we got to go get a receiver. But Detroit's got an opportunity. You're right about that. Yeah.
So I'm just looking at it as, look at the contenders, and I actually did this for CBS Sports on Friday. Look at the contenders or the teams with the quarterbacks he mentioned and the likely possibility ranked 1 to 5. I put Baltimore as 1. I had the Eagles at 4. I said don't count them out because it's the Eagles. You can't count them out. And I think I mentioned more of the cap space and his willingness to play with Jalen Hurts, but I also mentioned the number 1 and number 2 receivers for each team. And I'm like, well, how are you going to keep A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith happy, Dallas Goedert happy? It's difficult. I think the Eagles have problems doing that last year.
Yeah.
Right. And again, I've been beating this like a drum all weekend. We always talk about average annual salary, and because that's the easiest way to just understand it, but there's much more to it in guaranteed money and signing bonus and everything else. If the Chicago Bears offer him significantly more than the Chiefs or the Bills or the Eagles or the Ravens or wherever, he'll start to praise Justin Fields. Mark my words. If he's getting twice as much money from the Chicago Bears, who had the worst record in the National Football League last year, oh my, that Justin Fields, he's coming into his own. He's got one of the best. Oh yeah, DeAndre Hopkins will put a new scouting report out on the Bears quarterback when he signs with them because they offer him significantly more money
Yeah.
than anybody else and the ability to catch balls more than any of those other teams. Just write it down. He's going with the team that offers him the most money. All right, so if we put DeAndre Hopkins aside, Johnny Mac's going to be down there Thursday. Don't know if you are as well. When you get your first look at the 2023 Eagles, what's the first thing you're zeroing in on in their OTA on Thursday?
Well, the first thing I'm watching is who's going to be starting at linebacker. I know Nakobe Dean is, but who's going to be with him, John McMullen? Who's your guess?
Nicholas Morrow. Who else could it be?
I mean, you think it's going to be Nicholas Morrow?
It could be one of those default to the guy that's been here for a quick glimpse. But, who's it going to be? Christian Ellis? I mean, they are so thin at linebacker.
I have a higher upside in Christian Ellis than I do Nicholas Morrow at this point.
Man.
Well, I don't necessarily disagree with you because I think the ceiling is pretty low for Nicholas Morrow, but the floor, he knows how to play. He knows how to play this defense specifically. And Christian Ellis and Sean Bradley, I'll throw him in there. And even Davion Taylor, if you want to throw him back in the mix. I don't know. I mean, who has the most experience? Davion Taylor. Now, Davion Taylor has a history with DJ Elliott, the new linebackers coach. So I would be surprised if it's not Nicholas Morrow, first rep in 7-on-7s next to Nakobe Dean.
They need a linebacker. They really need a linebacker.
Yeah. Maybe Sean Desai throws us all a curveball. I'll throw this at you. I think we're going to see more 3 safety looks.
Oh, I could see that. Oh,
Reed
definitely.
Blankenship, Terrell Edmonds, Sidney Brown. It's a lot to put on a rookie, but
I just feel like Sidney Brown's going to be starting week 1 for some reason. I don't know why I think that, but you're right with the 3 safety thing. It'll definitely be a possibility.
Yeah. And Terrell Edmonds playing pseudo linebacker. I could see that.
Let me get your thoughts on a guy whose name you just threw out. If Davion Taylor, with the linebackers who are ahead of him on the depth chart right now, and a new coach coming in for his position that he's got a working relationship with, if he can't crack the starting lineup, is he a lock to make the team?
No.
Not at all. I was thinking about this the other day. Do you consider the Eagles 2020 draft a major success because of who they got in the second round, or do you consider it a failure because of Jalen Reagor and Davion Taylor and a couple other picks?
I consider it a success because they found a franchise quarterback.
they got a top 5 quarterback out of it.
That's all that matters. I mean, you look at it. Yeah, I mean, they made a mistake in the first round. There's no way around it. They made a bad mistake, but all right. Minnesota got the player right. Where are they? All right, they had a good season. He's been a phenomenal
any better than
player.
What they were.
No, I mean, all right, first round playoff exit. What are we talking about here? We should be talking about the larger picture. Justin Jefferson's a great player, but there's so many domino effects that people, and I talk about this with Jody all the time, Jeff. The assumption that Justin Jefferson was going to have the same numbers here is so flawed. Number one, he was going to be a good player. He's a great player.
I think he would have been okay here year 1.
Yeah. I mean, Kirk Cousins is a high volume thrower. We talk about it all the time, 4,000 yards every year. The numbers are going to be there. If Kirk Cousins is your quarterback, not necessarily the wins, but the numbers are going to be there. But then, you're not drafting DeVonta Smith because you already have a great receiver. You're not getting A.J. Brown probably because you already have a great receiver. Who knows how things
wait, John, which one is it? He wouldn't have put the numbers up year 1, so they would have stayed away from DeVonta Smith. They took Reagor and they took DeVonta Smith anyway, so it wasn't because
I said he was going to
be on a wide receiver. They took a wide receiver with a first-round draft pick in successive years anyway.
No, I said he was going to be a good player. He wasn't going to. He's a great player. He wasn't going to be Jalen Reagor here. I'm saying, he put up 1,600 yards, at least 1,600, maybe more.
He set the rookie record for receiving yard, and then I think Jamar Chase broke it the next year.
Yeah, he's probably getting 1,000 here, and everybody's excited. He's a great player. Because he is a great player. I'm not saying he wouldn't be a great player. And once you get the great player, well, then you stop looking at wide receiver, and who knows what happens is all I'm trying to say. There's all these butterfly effects to certain things. So you might have the better receiver, because as good as Devontae Smith is, as good as A.J. Brown is, both of them, they're not Justin Jefferson. He's, if not the best receiver in football.
Now, if you draft Jefferson, we'll play the butterfly effect here. Say you're at 12 again, you trade up ahead of the Giants. You take Micah Parsons instead of Devonta Smith.
Well, yeah, it could work out even better. Who knows? But my point is, it's not going to be the same. It's not going to be the same, and the assumption is you're going to go in the same direction. They made a mistake on the first round pick. That we can all agree on. They hit a home run in the second round. They weren't even trying to hit a home run. They were trying to hit a double, but they hit a home run. So it worked out.
Yeah, the wind was blowing at their backs when they made that pick.
And despite the fact that John McMullen may have said ahead of time, I see Micah Parsons as an edge player.
Yeah,
he was an outside linebacker. He's an off-ball linebacker. Howie Roseman was not using the 12th pick of the draft on an offside.
Well, I think the Eagles are smart enough, and I don't know that. That's an interesting. I have to ask somebody that. That's an interesting.
I had to mess with Micah Parsons the other day. So he was complaining about how, I don't know if you follow him on Twitter, John, but he was complaining about how expensive like Universal Studios is. I'm like, he's so used to Hershey Park where it's like $100 to go for the day, not like 300. And then he mentions it like a couple hours later. He goes, "Yeah, I'm so used to just walking down the street to Hershey Park,
baby."
And from what I heard, Micah Parsons was at Hershey Park quite a bit back when he was living in PA.
Can't blame him. Jody, I have to ask one of the Eagles scouts at some point what they looked at Micah Parsons for. I haven't asked that. Because never. It's interesting if they were looking at him as an off-ball linebacker or an edge rusher.
Yeah, I'm curious too, because I remember I talked to Devonta Smith a couple days before the draft, and he said, "Look, this is going to happen. Like, this is a very good possibility. They're trading up to get me." And I'm like, "Whoa, they're trading back up?" And he goes, "Well, they liked him." That's what he said. This is when Devonta talked a lot more than he does now. I think he learned his lesson about that over the years, but.
By the way, you're going to be in Allentown for the big softball classic?
I got to go see T.O., of course.
Is T.O. in this year's softball classic?
T.O. is playing. Terrell Evans is coming back. It's different now that he's an Eagle. A.J. Brown's back. Jalen Hurts is playing. I'm trying to remember. Oh, Slay's playing. I'm trying to remember.
Jake Elliott's going to be there. Ringer.
Did you see Jake Elliott basically shot like 600 or 700 par golf in the other day?
He's phenomenal golf.
He's a great phenomenal.
He's tremendous at everything. It's absurd. He's the best ping pong player on the team. He's the best golfer on the team. He's the best softball player. Although Richard Rodgers might have had something to say about that. He was a great softball player. But Jake Elliott is, for those who don't know, is great at everything. Everything.
He's going to be that guy who randomly throws a touchdown pass in an NFL game.
Ooh,
I don't know about that, but
we'll keep an eye on that one.
Hey, we've seen David Akers run 30 yards in an NFL game before. I'm sure Jake Elliott can throw a touchdown pass.
You never know. You gotta have the great proofs.
If we're just judging the Sirianni era, not that many gadget players.
No, not a gadget coaching staff.
No.
By the way, I talked about that with Shane Steichen once. Not,
Yeah, he's not a gadget guy.
No, not a gadget guy.
And
maybe that changes.
A kicker throwing a touchdown pass would be considered a gadget play. All right, Jeff Kerr, our buddy compatriot Reuben Frank and his Reuben observations this week. The lead item was the hype around Jalen Carter when camp opens up today. He said he thinks it might be the biggest for an Eagle rookie since Donovan McNabb, because he rightfully pointed out Carson Wentz was the third string quarterback when camp opened up the year that he was the Eagles pick with the number 2 overall selection. So you could only get so hyped. You knew he's going to be the future. We had no bloody idea the future was going to be week 1 with 2 quarterbacks ahead of him, but that's the way it worked out. Can that be the case? Can he be the most hyped Eagle draft pick in 25 years when he's going to be a part-time player?
I think so. I actually kind of agree with Rube on that. So there are a couple players I remember going back in my youth here at training camp. McNabb was pretty hyped. I remember a lot of people went to Lehigh for the first time. I think it was only their second or third year in Lehigh when they went. And McNabb, everybody was watching. Everybody had their Polaroid cameras out, wanted to get pictures of McNabb. Everybody wanted McNabb's autograph. And I'll tell you who's another rookie that got a lot of hype too. Corey Simon, when he came out, he was number 6 overall pick. And there was a lot of hype for him. And then he had that big game against Dallas week 1 and had a great rookie year. But I would agree. I think McNabb was probably one of the more hyped rookies of at least my lifetime. I'm trying to think of others. Freddie Mitchell, there wasn't that much hype as I remember correctly. I remember he had a bad training camp and that kind of snowballed. Leo Shepard didn't play much. Sean Andrews was a lineman. So Lane
Johnson was a 4th pick of the draft, but he's an offensive right tackle, wasn't even a left tackle. So even though you surely should factor in where you're talking about being drafted in the first round, offensive linemen just aren't going to get that kind of attention.
Deshaun Jackson had a lot of hype, but he was a 2nd round pick too. So I agree with Rube on this one. I think there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on Jalen Carter because if we were, say, if this was January 1st, and if I would have told you the Eagles would have gotten Jalen Carter in the draft, I think everybody would be jumping up and down.
Well, they should be, as long as nothing happens off the field. I mean, I think he was the best player in the draft. I've said it from day one.
It's a game changer.
And the Eagles got him. There's reasons they got him. Obviously, we all know those reasons. Quarterbacks, to Jody's point, quarterbacks are always going to be hyped. But Carson had was Sam Bradford, Chase Daniel, Carson Wentz.
Number 3.
It's interesting. If Teddy Bridgewater doesn't get hurt, the season starts that way, by the way. Sam Bradford's the starting quarterback, and how that would have changed things, talking about butterfly effects.
I wasn't even remotely excited for that year. That was my first year covering the NFL, and I'm like, and they had me do a lot of Eagles stuff, and I'm just like, you know what, they're kind of punting on this year with the Bradford thing. It's, kind of getting the culture back, and then Teddy Bridgewater gets hurt, and all of a sudden Carson Wentz is starting. You're like, oh, okay. Now Eagles fans have a reason to watch all 16 games this year.
Yeah, it definitely worked out long run. They were a lot better than expected with a rookie quarterback who, by the way, didn't have a training camp because Carson got hurt. People forget that, and he was the 3rd string quarterback for most of it. And all of a sudden, he's got to show up week 1. I think they started 3-0 that season too.
They did. Remember they killed Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh was a good team that year, and they had the bye week, and then Lane had the suspension, and that was my running thing. Like, oh, the Eagles are like, I think they were 7-3 in games Lane Johnson played, and they didn't win a game at the end or something like that. I forget what the stat was.
But if you take away quarterbacks and Donovan, who was going to be the guy, and everybody knew that, this is about, the biggest non-quarterback player they've gotten in many, many years from a talent perspective. They're usually a pretty good team, so they're not at the top of the draft. This player would have won at the top of the draft, but didn't because of issues. I mean, worst case scenario, he would have been top 5. Worst case scenario. If he had no issues, I think he would have been number 1. I really believe Chicago just takes him with no issues. They need they needed a defensive player. They needed a difference maker on defense. They decided to go forward with Justin Fields. I mean, they got number 1 talent. So yeah, there's going to be expectations. I think it makes sense.
It does. And in terms of training camp hype, just overall players, not even draft picks, I mean, he's not going to be on that Terrell Owens, AJ Brown level, but he's going to be up there. A lot of people are going to be watching him nationally to see what happens. And I have a feeling Jalen Carter is going to be that player we're looking at 2-3 years. And national guys are going to be like, how did teams pass on him? How did 8 teams pass on Jalen Carter? And they're going to forget about his offseason or his off-field situation.
If there are no reoccurrences.
Yeah, exactly. If there are no reoccurrences.
Then they go, how the hell did he go number 9? But if he's had issues and is suspended, they're going to go, yeah, the Eagles rolled the dice and it might have crapped out on him. I want to reference 2 names you guys just threw out there. Teddy Bridgewater, Carson Wentz. Who's got the better chance to be the starting quarterback of the Las Vegas Raiders when the season gets underway this season, since Jimmy G all of a sudden's got a bad foot? He may never play a game for the Raiders. Somebody's got to be the Raiders starting quarterback, and they're 2 of the better free agent quarterbacks left out there. Either one of them going to end up in Vegas?
Tom Brady has a better chance of suiting up.
Door number 3, Tom Brady.
Just throw in Tom Brady. He's never going to go away. He doesn't even want the TV money coming this way.
Yeah. Now, I'll tell
you who's behind door number 3. As per our buddy Rick Saratella, Aiden O'Connell. He was a lot higher on O'Connell in the draft prospect and thought that he landed in the perfect situation. This was before we found out Jimmy G's foot is still screwed. He said he's going to get a chance to play in Vegas this year as a 4th round draft pick.
Yeah, I guess he's going to be the backup there, right?
Saratella was very high on him. I watched him play at Purdue. I thought he was okay at best. Rick was a much bigger fan than I was, but he thinks
I'll trust Rick's opinion on that, though. He watches these guys every day.
I will say this. I think Josh McDaniels is a one-trick pony, and that one trick is getting out of Tom Brady's way. And, if there's any way they can get him on the field, we've never had this instance before, right? I mean, part owner of the team coming down to play. I don't know how that works from a contract standpoint.
Antonio Brown tried doing this weekend, and he bailed out of it. I don't know if you heard that story, John.
The Albany Empire.
Yeah, and then he goes, well, the paperwork needed to be filed. I'm like, you're the owner. You don't need to do this. You can bypass every law in the league to play football.
See, I don't know if that's the case. That's probably the case in arena football, whatever that league that is. He could probably show up that day and play. With the NFL, there's got to be some things worked out.
I don't ever recall anybody coaching Paul Brown, but
if you had Fred Florio this weekend on Pro Football Talk, any one individual owner can block Tom Brady from playing. If he is officially signed off and purchased his percentage of the Raiders, and they're saying that he has, but I don't know if the paperwork is all done and money exchange hands or whatever. If that has transpired, any owner, not they need a percentage of the owner, one says, nope, can't go from ownership to player, not going to allow it. They can stop Brady signing with the Raiders. He would have to turn around and sell back his portion of the team to become a free agent and then sign with the Raiders. But he cannot be a player and a part owner at the same time in the NFL.
Well, I think he would just divest to give it back to Mark Davis and then just give it back when he stops playing. I think that's easy to get around. But from the standpoint of the salary cap and how they have to work that stuff out, I mean, he could divest it and put it in a third trust, and there's all kinds of ways around that. But from the salary cap standpoint, what are they going to pay him? Is the NFL going to say, if they say because he's an owner, quote in quotes, are they going to say, well, we're going to pay him the league minimum and get around it that way? I don't think that would fly. So there's a lot of hurdles they would have to get over. But Josh McDaniels, that's all he's got, man. I think they're going to try to work it out. They can't do anything with Josh McDaniels unless he's getting out of Tom Brady's way.
Who's the worst coach, McMullen? Is it Josh McDaniels or Dennis Allen?
Josh McDaniels. I think Josh McDaniels is a good offensive coordinator. I think Dennis Allen's a good defensive coordinator.
Yeah,
as far as managing people, Yeah, I got to give it to Dennis Allen. And I'm not a big Dennis Allen
Yeah,
fan.
Dennis Allen at least has a chance to be half decent this year because of his roster. We'll see, though.
Yeah, I'm not. I've been a non-McDaniels guy forever, so I'm not going to change my tune on that one now.
Eagles almost hired him.
Yeah. Remember that? They almost hired Jim Haslett, too, and Adam Gase, and a bunch of other people I don't want to mention.
Penn McAdoo.
All right, I'm going to put this to you, Jeff Kerr. We're running out of time here. I saw Johnny McMullen write an article for SI about the backup left tackle for the Philadelphia Eagles. Not going to be Andre Dillard this year. They had him the last couple of years. He didn't achieve what he was supposed to as a first-round draft pick, but he was a pretty good backup left tackle, and the Eagles didn't have to sweat it when Mailata got hurt. They could plug in a pretty good replacement for him. Who's going to be the Eagles' backup left tackle this season?
Oh, boy, John McMullen probably knows this a heck of a lot better.
I'll get it. He already wrote his opinion, and he'll pass that along to us in just a second. But you first, who's going to be the Eagles' backup left tackle? It's kind of an important position. You got your 22 starters, and then you got your order of importance of positions in backup slots. Left tackle's a pretty big one. Who's going to be the Eagles' backup left tackle?
Yeah, John, you just gave me something to watch for on Thursday now, but what? Can Jack Driscoll do it?
See, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
McMullen's got him down the list.
Well, I don't, Jack he did it for a little bit last year, and I think he did it better than they expected. So I actually think that's the default position going into camp is Jack Driscoll being the swing tackle. I think they hope somebody else develops, but the problem is, and this is why I wrote the story, is because I was talking to Jordan Mailata last week. I told this story on the show last week.
Yeah, you
Jody.
did.
Like Jordan knows everybody's name. He's one of those guys that learns our names, reporters' names. And Zach Berman asked him about the backup tackles, and he couldn't come up with Frank Johnson.
Oh, my God.
Or Roderick Johnson. And I'm like, what does that tell you? And those are the guys. And they signed an undrafted kid by the name of Trevor Reed, who is just like a Jeff Stoutland guy. I mean, he's super athletic. He's one of those guys that weighed 245 when he got to college. He put on weight. He's got a 38-inch vertical leap. He runs it like he runs fast. He's the most athletic tackle in the draft, but he's not strong enough, obviously. And it'll probably take a couple years. I think ultimately keep an eye on the name Trevor Reed. If he does anything in camp, I think that's the long term. Short term, I think it's going to be Jack Driscoll, swing tackle.
Do you think they bring in they sign DJ Fluker?
I think if they would have signed him, they would have signed him right away. So I'm going to say no for now. Now, if injuries pop up, obviously that could change things. But they got a lot of bodies. And, can DJ Fluker play left tackle? He can play right tackle. I don't know if he's better than Jack Driscoll. So
that's how I feel right now.
And just remember this: the Eagles like to throw that cross-training phrase around a lot. What happens if Driscoll is the best right guard?
Well, that's why I brought it up. That's what I put in the piece. It's all fine to say if Cam Jurgens is supposed to be the right guard and Tyler Steen, if they don't handle it, they're just going to put Jack Driscoll in because they know he can handle it. So people got to keep that in the back of their minds.
So
Jack Driscoll
Driscoll is not an Eagle starter, but he sounds like a pretty damn important player who could land in a couple of different spots for them this upcoming year.
He could play 4 positions for him. I just don't know if he could play center.
Yeah.
We shall see. Always a pleasure, Jeff Kerr. Go back to watching replays of whatever races you missed yesterday or go out and bowl at 300.
You know what? The way I've been bowling, 300 isn't in the
Not
cards.
happening?
No,
maybe over 2 games? Oh, you're not down in the 150s,
not that
are you?
I laid an egg at States now, so it's on the Nationals. It's
okay. Yeah. Our national bowling entry, Jeff Kerr, will be representing Birds 365. Kerr, always a pleasure, bud. We'll get you back up in a couple of weeks.
Sounds great, boys. Thanks for having me on.
CBSSports.com's Jeff Kerr here with us on Birds 365. All right, Johnny Mac, Jody Mac coming back. One more guest to come about 20 minutes from now. We'll take a little bit of a wider version of the Eagles' national perspective, and we'll ask him some other National Football League questions as well. Matt Verderam joined Johnny Mac over at SI, jumped from Fanside into Sports Illustrated. Matt Verderam coming up in about 20 minutes. So